It's go time.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham, and special guests, Dave Thomas. 620 CKRM, radio play-by-play voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Later in the program, Dave Thomas, the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, will be joining us. But first, Heath, let's talk about some news events that have come up in the last 48 hours. Coming out of Winnipeg, Brady Oliveira has signed a big extension with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 3 years and a lot of guaranteed money.
He was the first domino to fall for the Blue Bombers that I believed was going to happen in this re-signing of your own free agents window that we're in right now. A 3-year extension is great for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Oliveira is 29 years old. He had his 4th consecutive 1,000-yard rushing season, was quite high in the league in total yards from scrimmage as well. He had a career year for receptions and receiving yards. Despite missing some games and seeing some limited play, he was in that 1,600 yards from scrimmage range, which is pretty impressive for any offensive player in this league. We have to wait and see what happens with that offensive coordinator position. We've discussed before, is Jason Hogan back? We know they've been looking at some other options for offensive coordinators as well. That's the next big piece, I think, that we will see come to fruition in Winnipeg. But almost immediately after the Oliveira contract, we see Reddick Cramdy has re-upped as well. So the money involved with Brady Oliveira was that big hurdle that the Bombers needed to get over first. Now they can look at what's left for everybody else.
Does that mean Willie Jefferson? He's the one that seems to be the person that could be out in this process. You mused about it yourself in the last episode. Does the Blue Bombers brass have room for him and the contract that he'll command, or will they have to look forward to something else? We saw Jackson Jeffcoat sort of not get an offer at the end of what proved to be the end of his career. Is Willie Jefferson getting to that point as well? And if he's not offered by the Bombers, is anyone else interested?
That's the big question. We did definitely see Willie Jefferson take a step back in some of his defensive stats. The one skill he still brings to the table is his immense ability to knock down passes. In previous seasons, we saw those knockdowns kind of come alongside quarterback pressures and sacks. We didn't see those sack numbers this year. I believe the Bombers would like to have Willie Jefferson back. I don't believe they would like him to be back at similar money to what he's making now. If he were to return to Winnipeg, there would be a pay cut situation for sure. How willing he is to do that remains to be seen. And I would not be surprised if he tests the free agent market. He'd have to find a pretty good fit, I think, and some pretty substantial money to get him away from Winnipeg. He likes the organization. He likes the city. We said the same thing about Adam Bighill previously as well. And we know injuries played a part in it, but he did not re-sign with Winnipeg. They didn't make him an offer, ended up in Calgary, did get on the field late this past season. Willie Jefferson, I think, has a bit more left in the tank than Bighill did at the end of last season, but not worth as much of a financial hit as I think he would like to see.
Jefferson, to me, I thought he had a down year. His stats prove that was the case. He, in that big game against the Saskatchewan Roughriders on Labor Day, wasn't on the field for almost the entire first quarter. Discipline or injury, those types of question marks then get unanswered when nobody's saying what's really going on. If the Bombers want him back, where do they find the money? Because they've got other potential FAs to take care of in this carousel. Nick Dembski comes to mind. What do you do? Brady Oliveira didn't command a discount this time. He wanted to be paid. He got a lot of guaranteed money. He said that was non-negotiable. He went into the office and said, I want guaranteed money. You could see at 29, this is the prime time. This is it. This is where he's going to make the most money, and he wanted to cash in. And the Bombers met him. It's only a $6 million cap. They're starting to run out of places to find more money.
Their big free agent splash last year was bringing in James Vaughters on that defensive line as well. And you mentioned Jackson Jeffcoat we've seen the stats of how Jefferson performed when Jeff Coat was at the other side of that defensive line. And we've seen the regression over the last couple of seasons without Jeff Coat in the lineup. The Bombers hoped Waters was going to be that same catalyst. And I would say James Waters had a disappointing season this year as well. He's also looking into that free agency. The Bombers have to decide what they are doing with that defensive line. And looking at Willie's numbers over the last couple of years, defensive tackles was 15 this year. That's the lowest number he's had since 2016 when he only played 5 games. 3 sacks this year. That's his lowest sack total since 2016 when he played 5 games.
And he was with the Saskatchewan Roughriders that year.
He was. So we're definitely seeing that decline. You look at his numbers last year, 25 tackles and 6 sacks. We thought that was a little bit off compared to his award-winning season of 2022 with 33 tackles, 7 sacks. I don't have the past knockdown numbers directly in front of me at this moment. We know those have been fairly consistent, but you're not seeing the same speed and ability to get to the quarterback that we've seen in the past.
Teams can scheme around him. So if you're going to get schemed against, then you have to do something else. And that it means getting to the quarterback. Because if the passing lane is taken away and they just look to the other side, you got to get to the quarterback then and don't let them make that throw. And Willie, 3 sacks, that's getting pretty low. And when a guy who not 2 years ago had 11 of them, that's a pretty big drop off. Now you could say double teams, etc. He's getting to that age where chances are they're going to start looking elsewhere. At 34 and a defensive lineman, not everybody's Micah Johnson right now.
You're right. And 35 by the time camp opens in 2026. Micah Johnson is a very different defensive lineman than Willie Jefferson as well. You can play a little bit longer in the type of defensive line play that Micah Johnson brings to the field than Willie Jefferson. As I said, Willie's been making a career out of his explosiveness and his speed. Once that begins to drop off, that value of him as a player drops off as well.
Looking to somebody else that's getting up there in his career, decided to come back because he wanted to finish the job in Edmonton. Cody Fajardo has signed for 2026. Fajardo, who saw 2 teams for whom he played in the Grey Cup and kind of felt that left a sting. He wanted to get back on the field and get into that game. He, of course, led the Alouettes to the victory in 2023. He signs, puts a real sort of spin on what happens with Trey Ford now. Ford is due $110,000 as a bonus coming up at the beginning of February. The Elks have to start thinking, do we want him? And if we do, at what rate are we willing to pay him? Because Ford himself has a contract in excess of $425,000, maybe closer to $450,000.
I would be very surprised if Trey Ford sees that roster bonus with the Edmonton Elks in February. I believe he will be gone. The Elks would be foolish if they're not currently trying to trade Trey Ford somewhere else.
Could they renegotiate though and bring it down?
They could. I think the Trey Ford situation in Edmonton has been handled kind of poorly. I would be surprised if Trey Ford wants to stay in Edmonton, given everything that's happened with the organization over the past year. The plus side for him is still that his brother, Terrell Ford, is a defensive back with the Elks organization. Terrell came to Edmonton specifically for the opportunity to play with his brother. Saw Trey get benched early on this season and not really get meaningful playing time after that. Is there a want for the Elks to renegotiate to keep him around, or are they looking to move him right now? And with his salary, it's got to be tough to do. It's looking more and more like the Elks are going to have to cut their losses and not really get anything in return, but not pay that roster bonus and anything else owing so they can save a little bit of money there.
Given that bonus is at the beginning of February, you have that amount of time to sort this out. Trade, release, or sign an extension with him, but bring the dollar value down so that you don't have $1 million tied up in 2 quarterbacks, of whom one of them only gets to play. Now for Fajardo, he kind of made a quip on the Elks podcast where he said that I don't want to end a career where I don't play a full season. And to be fair to him, he didn't play the first 5 games. The Elks were 1-4 when he took over. They go 6-7 when he's the quarterback, but they made a run at the playoffs, getting ousted with about 2 weeks to go. he sees it as an opportunity to finish on a high note. And I kind of like that attitude where if he gets to play all 18 and he doesn't have it, then okay, I know that my career is over. Playing 13 and we get close, that's a big sort of carrot.
I agree with you on that one. If we look at a full camp, again, that's something that is very important in the development and the success of a quarterback is going into camp, knowing you're that number one guy, working with the offensive coordinator to design a playbook that fits your strengths. 6 games in, they now had to fit Cody Fajardo into a system that they were designing around Trey Ford. Similar quarterbacks in some scrambling ability, but different quarterbacks in how they manage a game. And I'm happy to see Cody Fajardo back. He's an entertaining player. He's charismatic. He's a great interview. We saw the passion he had when he led the misfit Montreal Alouettes to a Grey Cup as well. That was a team that didn't know what direction they were heading and ended up working the way right to the top. He's seen that success, and I think he believes the same thing can be done in Edmonton. He's helping the Elks organization find their identity, get some continuity, and he believes that they should be not only a playoff team, but a Grey Cup contender in 2026.
The Argonauts, they hired Greg Quick as their defensive coordinator, and they got him out of Montreal. He was their defensive line coach with the Alouettes. That means that there's going to be some changes in that defensive coaching staff, not the least of which is Jason Shivers will not have his contract renewed, and he was the co-defensive coordinator last year with the Argonauts.
Coach Mike Miller is starting to put his stamp on the coaching staff. Head coaches bring in people that they're comfortable with. Now, the fact that Miller was an internal hire as well, working his way through the Argonauts organization, making these changes is interesting. Jason Shivers and Kevin Iben were also part of that coaching staff under Ryan Dinwiddie. To see them bring somebody else in, Greg Quick joining the organization, I don't want to say there was trouble in the dressing room, but maybe some different philosophies on how this team was performing on the field and what changes needed to be made. I think it's a good hire for Mike Miller as well to have somebody with that kind of pedigree that Greg Quick brings as a new DC.
He has been a DC in the CFL before, and that was with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and that was 10 years ago in 2015. Corey Chamberlain was fired mid-season in that season, and the Roughriders finished with a 3-15 record. Bob Dice actually inherited the job at the end of that year. You look at the Montreal defense and you think this is really something special. It's little doubt then that teams would come knocking and say, hey, we want a piece of that. For Greg Quick, he's been around, like I say, getting close to 70, which is nothing for coaches, it seems. It'll be a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of philosophies for that Toronto defense. And that's the one thing that, if anything, we've talked about incessantly about the Argonauts. They want to change their ways. They've won their 3 cups in 8 years. Now it's time to change and see what we can do the next 8.
Quick was working under Noel Thorpe, the defensive coordinator for the Montreal Alouettes, and that defense has been one of the tops in the league for the past several seasons, seeing success, winning a Grey Cup as well. So, as you said, not surprising to see other teams take note of that. And if you want to change up and improve your defense, you start looking at who's got the best one right now and who we can maybe pry away from that team. And in this situation, Thorpe doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but Quick, because the DC position is a promotion, they're able to talk, they're able to offer him a contract and bring him over to the Argos.
Sticking with the Eastern Conference, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, of course, have signed Bo Levi Mitchell to a 2-year contract extension. Bo, in his own words, has said he's going to take it a year at a time. I wonder why you signed for 2. You're so non-committal about finishing the contract.
The interesting thing with CFL contracts is even though they're a 2 or 3 year deal, they are kind of year by year in a sense because there's those opportunities. What a turnaround for Bo Levi Mitchell over these past 2 seasons, leaving Calgary with injury trouble, getting injured early on in Hamilton, and then back-to-back most outstanding player in the East and continuing to play at a very high level. He's putting up career numbers this late in his career. He's found comfort in Hamilton with that offense, with that coaching staff, with the receivers he has around him. Wouldn't this be a great feather in the cap for Bo Levi Mitchell to be able to bring that Grey Cup to Hamilton and the drought and walk off as a champion.
What does that say to Taylor Powell, and what does that say to Jake Dolegala, the other two quarterbacks in that room that are not signed and are free agents? You know that Bo is back at least for 2026, most likely is back for 2027. Do you want to stay in that program? If you're Dolegala, maybe, but if you're Taylor Powell, who's been there for a few years, do you want to fly somewhere else and give it a shot with somebody else?
That's the big question. But again, we are in a situation where teams are looking for maybe a number two guy here and there. It's not a lot of number one jobs out there for competition right now. We know Toronto has stated who their number one guy is. We know Montreal isn't turning away from Davis Alexander at this point. We see Mitchell locked up for 2 years. Zach Collaros is signed in Winnipeg. Trevor Harris re-upped in Saskatchewan. Vernon Adams Jr. seems happy and have found a place in Calgary. Cody Fajardo has re-upped in Edmonton. The BC Lions aren't going to give anybody a shot over Nathan Rourke for that number one job, either with what they're paying him. You got to look at the fit and where you're going to get that opportunity to play. Again, Ottawa is that one. Drew Brown has had some injury troubles. They like him as a quarterback when he's on the field. Are they going to sign everybody that's available coming into camp and let everybody fight it out? That's the one spot that I see that doesn't have an absolute 100% locked in number one quarterback.
That would be interesting if Ryan Dinwiddie decides, hey, let's make it a full competition to see who gets the starting job. Taylor Powell versus Dustin Crum. They came in almost within a month of each other into the league, different paths since they've been here, but both were highly touted. That's really fascinating. I'd love to see it play out. There may be other teams, though, that want Taylor Powell on their roster if Hamilton doesn't have room for him anymore.
Well, that's true. And I talked about Zach Collaros in Winnipeg, but behind him right now, Chris Strevler, probably his injuries won't allow him even back on the field. Not that he was the solution there. They are bringing in the UFL most valuable player to compete for that number two job. Terry Wilson might still be in that quarterback room as well, but that's not a lot of pedigree. Calgary, Vernon Adams Jr., PJ Walker wasn't a great number two from what we saw so far. A bit untested. He didn't get a lot of time to prove his worth, but he's north of 30 years old at this point in his career as well. You start looking at guys competing for that number two job, and those are two spots where there might be some competition. Just quickly circling back to Trey Ford as well, did we ever see a sign and trade with Edmonton renegotiating that contract with a deal in hand as a possibility? We don't see that often in the CFL. Other teams might be interested in giving up some assets if they know there is a renegotiated contract already done.
Bryce Perkins and PJ Walker, those are the two names that came out of the United States in the last couple of years with some status. As you mentioned, PJ Walker didn't have a great go of it, then really got injured at the end of the season. Bryce Perkins, there's some thought that maybe he is the heir apparent in Winnipeg. Of course, he hasn't even been to camp yet. Everyone gets excited every time there's a new face in town. Montreal Alouettes and Marc-Antoine Dequoy, his future with the team is up for grabs. A guy that Danny Machocha knew when he was with the Montreal Carabin.
I'm surprised to hear these comments from Danny Machocha. Marc-Antoine Dequoy is one of the best safeties in the CFL. He's explosive in the backfield. He's got speed. He's got good hands. He makes interceptions and he makes big plays. And he's a francophone, which does not hurt in that Montreal market as well. I don't know if this is a bit of a negotiating tactic by Machocha at this point, but a little bit puzzling to see that gray area on the future of Dequoy with the Alouettes.
He is the type of player that makes the spectacular play. I think back to that East final where on the opening drive, he picks it off and takes it the length of the field against the Toronto Argonauts and Chad Kelly. I don't know how you move on from him given what he provides. The way that Danny Machocha, who was basically bristling at some of the questions that were being given to him, and I can understand that. He's got 26 free agents, and he said point blank, you can't sign all 26. Something's got to give because we got a cap to live with.
And Darnell Sankey is another name with that Alouettes defense. They did cut him. Outstanding linebacker. We know there's some big name linebackers up for free agency this year. I'm a bit surprised to see Sankey released this early, but it's going to give him an opportunity to get out there and see what he can lock up for a job next season as well.
You're exactly right. This gives them the time to talk to other teams. And so he's basically ahead of the curve when it comes to getting a contract signed. And the Alouettes, essentially, as hard as it is on him, it was a kind of a favor. You gave him the door and you said, look, go through and see what you can find out there.
And they have spent some money already in re-signing or extending people this season. Davis Alexander, we knew how happy they were with his play. Tyson Philpott is now one of the top paid receivers in the CFL, and rightfully so. And offensive lineman Pierre-Olivier Lestage as well. So those are some pretty key components on offense. We've talked about how dominant Montreal's defense has been. With that comes heightened salaries, and maybe a couple of these guys are pricing themselves out, and it's time to find the next diamond in the rough.
Success breeds more success, but it also brings more cost. Salary caps tend to level the playing field. And a sad note, just before we get to the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Dave Thomas, Jack Abenshan has passed away. The Roughriders, he was a key component to that team that went to 11 straight playoff years and won a Grey Cup in 1966. He joined the team in 1965. He was one of these rare individuals that played offensive line and was the place kicker for the football team. That was more commonplace back in the 60s. It went away in the mid 70s. If you've been living under a rock, you don't know that the Saskatchewan Roughriders are the 2025 Grey Cup champions. And with us tonight is the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders on 620 CKRM and the Rough Rider Radio Network. Harvard Media, it is Dave Thomas. Dave, so happy you could be back on with us.
Hey, thank you. The pleasure is all mine. And even if you are under a rock, I think the celebration has been seismic. So I think you probably knew the Riders won.
That is one of the hallmarks of the CFL. The smallest franchise in the league seems to have the biggest fan base.
I don't dispute you. It's been an incredible few weeks here as the celebration is definitely on in Rider Nation. But you know how things work with the Rough Riders. We can't celebrate too long. We already have to start looking ahead to what potentially could be an obstacle for 2026.
Yeah, that obstacle could be Nathan Rourke or other free agents that are out there. For me, I mean, as a lifelong Rough Riders fan, it was very exciting. Let's talk about you and that trail that you went on over the season to get to the point where you saw this team leave for Winnipeg. There's so much discussion about the beginning of, I believe it was training camp, where Corey Mace puts up a little PowerPoint and says, this is the path that we have to take. Do you have any idea what that path they took was?
Well, basically the PowerPoint, and again, Coach Mace is such an amazing communicator that it's something else. And the path essentially was that we've got a long goal and mentioned Grey Cup, but that would be the last time that it was talked about really until they had won the West Finals. So the path was keeping in front of you what's in front of you, but living in the now. So that was why the 1-0 mantra really took hold this year. It started last year, but really came to fruition this year. No matter what happens, we focus on here and now and what we can control, and we'll let the rest dictate itself outside of that. And that was the PowerPoint. That was the message. And the team bought in from day one.
And of course, there's lore from when Ryan Dinwiddie left a coin under the locker in BC and said, we're coming back to pick this up. Not telling anyone, of course, until they got to Vancouver for Grey Cup week. This PowerPoint now seems to have lifted itself into sort of that lore.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it'll never probably ever see the light of day as far as the public is concerned, but it set a tone, it sent a message. And like I say, you can't fault the path. And now that the path has been defined as far as where it leads to, the key is, can you take it a second time? And again, when it comes to directions and me, that probably wouldn't be very easy. And let's just hope the Riders laid some breadcrumbs down along that path so they know how to follow it exactly to a T and do something the franchise has never done, which is win back-to-back, of course.
Well, technically they have this time. This is the weird thing. 2013, 2025, they didn't lose any Grey Cups in between. So they've won 2 appearances in a row.
True. But they'd like to make it back-to-back years now. And I was shocked at how quickly that talk started. And really, it was the day after. Like, it was like, wow, guys, like, take a moment, celebrate, and then we'll talk about this. But they're a focused and determined bunch, and they got a taste of what it feels to be successful, and they like that taste, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that 1-0 mantra that you talked about was really something that Mike O'Shea focused on with the Blue Bombers as well. And he had the whole team buying in to a lot of success, but a bit of a step back this year. Speaking of the year that was, on paper at the beginning of the season, the Riders were the favorite to win the West. And we all know on paper doesn't mean anything when it gets to games on the field necessarily. At what point this season did you look at that team and go, hey, there is something here. I think these guys are legitimately the best team in the West and have a good chance at winning the crown?
Well, I'm lucky that Riders Vice President of Football Operations and General Manager Jeremy O'Day really kind of backed what my feeling was. And it was when the Riders were in Winnipeg and were able to sweep the home series that is the Labor Day Classic and the rematch. And I haven't seen a lot of emotion after a victory in the regular season, but that one was different. And you could just sense it, whether you were in the dressing room, whether we were on the flight home. That one had some significance in the fact that the Riders were almost able to exercise the demon that was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and playing at Princess Auto Stadium. So getting that victory was huge. And it also, I think, and it sounds ridiculous, it almost sounds funny in a way, but there's the trophy that was awarded at the end of the game for years and years and years that the Riders had to see carried off by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And even though it may have sounded like it was in jest, the Riders were some upset that they didn't get that trophy because they won the game fair and square. And I think that provided a little bit of motivation, a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, but it also showed them that, hey, they're on the right path. And when they got that victory, that was when I started sensing it, that this team has set themselves up for a playoff run. And once they can clinch the West and once they can get healthy, which again, really they weren't from Labor Day on until they got into the West final, that was when I knew. And that's exactly what Jeremy O'Day pointed to, as well as head coach Corey Mason conversations after the fact. So that was where the season turned. And I think that was where the belief really started to blossom.
One of the secrets that was kind of revealed later in the season was the shoulder injury that Trevor Harris had picked up in British Columbia. Do you know how severe it was? And it didn't seem to hamper his play after a couple of weeks. Right at the time, right after, he seemed to lose a step for some reason.
I think it had an effect on him. He'll tell you that it didn't, but I don't think it was a major will he or won't he play moment. It was, he's going to play through it, and he was determined to play through it. One of Trevor Harris's goals coming into the 2025 season obviously was winning the Grey Cup, but individually, he felt that there was, I believe that he felt, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe that he felt a knock on him the last couple of years was not being able to start 18 games. So he set that goal for himself early that he was going to start the 18. And unfortunately, after he took that shot in Toronto and then subsequently missed the BC game the week after, you could see the dejection in his face. Just because it was such a short turnaround, he was unable to clear all the concussion protocol stuff that he needed to. That's why he was held out of the game. But then, yeah, again, he took that shot again in BC. And like you say, yeah, it may have been a tweak. It may have, maybe even been more than a tweak, but Trevor's determination was that it wasn't going to stop him this year. He was on a personal mission to prove the detractors wrong, that he could play 18 games and that he could lead a team as a starting quarterback to the Grey Cup championship. So, yeah, it came out, but I don't think it was a huge underlying factor by any means.
Keeping with the injury topic and the health of the team, Sean Bain Jr. played 4 games. Keon Schaefer-Baker played 5. Sam Emilus played 7. How impressive was that depth of the receiver roster where you've got guys like Dante Myers, Tommy Nield, Joe Robustelli stepping up and filling those holes from those star receivers on the team?
Absolutely. Again, the depth in that receiver room, unparalleled, I would suggest, across the entire Canadian Football League. It'll be interesting because there's going to have to be some tough decisions made there, right? Sean Bain Jr., whom you said, again, they tried to work him into the lineup as a returner when Mario Alford was injured. Joe Robustelli just continues to make plays and do things. It was unfortunate for Joe that, again, he got injured on that first play in Winnipeg in a meaningless game late in the season that cost him another start in the final against BC. And then, again, it was, well, is he going to be good enough to go or not? And then, again, we haven't talked about Dante Myers. Again, all kinds of world-class speed in him. He learned the game. He took it on. You've got Keyshawn Johnson as well, who didn't even play in the Grey Cup game nor the West Final. It's going to be interesting to see how dinged up he is. But what a luxury it is when, okay, we'll bring in Mitch Picton. That's going to work out okay because he'll make plays. Tommy Nield had an amazing season after, again, getting hurt in training camp and then having to wait out his time. Again, they didn't hand him a roster spot. Del Duncan Busby was solid through the year. Joe came back from the NFL. And again, the list just keeps going on. So it's a spoiled wealth of riches, if you will, but it's one of those things that the Riders now got to make some tough decisions on.
It's great to have that depth, but if you're Trevor Harris, now you've got to work with a different guy. It seems like every week at the Z spot, at the Y spot. How much time does it take to get the feel for where that guy's going to be on his route? Is he going to be where he's supposed to be or not?
Cohesion and trust is what Trevor Harris brings to an offense. And right from the get-go, he sat down and, again, he works very tirelessly with the rest of the quarterbacks, analyzing every detail of not only their opponent, but of themselves. And he brings that into the meeting room with the offense. And so when he speaks, the receivers listen, and it's because he puts them in good spots. He doesn't set them up for the big hit. There's such a big mutual trust in there. And again, that just speaks to the receiver room, the depth that is there, and Trevor Harris's leadership overall on the team, and then his mastery of the position, that people trust him. And when he leads, they're going to follow. And there was a lot of extra work that was done by the receivers this year, but they never ever seemed to have much drop off. And again, that also needs to go as a credit to the entire offensive coaching staff for making sure that everyone was prepared so that when their opportunity came, they were there to make the play.
You talked about the vibe that the team felt after winning the rematch in Winnipeg, but I want to take you back to June the 20th, and this is the game in Toronto where the Argonauts look like they've got this game going to overtime.
23 seconds to go, and the Argos have tied it at 32. A game that Saskatchewan looked like they were in full control of early on in this second half when they had a 24-10 lead. So Haralahu back to kick off. Ball on the 30-yard line to tee it. Thomas Bertrand-Houda and Mario Alford back to return. This one will be taken by Alford right in the middle of the field at his 10, up to the 20, 25, 30, has a seam to the 40, 50,
Game over! Let's go!
Alford down the sideline.
Let's go!
Be caught.
Yeah!
Flags. Mario Alford. Touchdown Riders.
You got the feeling.
Mario Alford takes a kickoff in the final minute the other way against the 11 players on the other side. What did that do for the Rough Riders in that moment? Because they were kind of on the ropes and all of a sudden a miracle showed up.
Absolutely. And again, right, you got to be good to be lucky and lucky to be good. And I don't want to say for an instant that play was lucky. Again, Toronto didn't have enough players on the field when it came down to it, but I think it just cemented the belief, right? That, okay, you know what? Stuff is going to happen in a football game. And the players talked about, you look at this team, how they led post to post, essentially, right? They led from game in week number 1 in the West Division all the way into the Grey Cup. But there was obstacles, hurdles, and challenges and adversity that they had to face. It may have not been on a week to week basis, but it was even sometimes in game adversity. And I think that cemented, like I said, the belief and the message that Corey Mace was, hey, you know what? We stick together. We're pretty tough to beat. The third phase showed up, and Mario Alford wins a game for them in Toronto, and again, just built the confidence from there.
Just looking at the list quickly, 45 pending free agents on this current Riders roster. I know Winnipeg built their success in really retaining that core of players. Do you see the same thing here in Saskatchewan, or are a lot of these guys going to be picked over by other teams looking to improve?
I know that they're going to do everything they can to keep as many players as they can, for sure. And I go back 3 years ago, so start of the 2023 campaign, right? So we're talking about signing AJ Ouellette and bringing over Jameer Thurman, add Marcus Sales early on in that 2024 campaign. And I remember Jeremy O'Day deadpanning everyone saying, yeah, you know what? We were active in free agency today, but we don't want to be. Like, the best thing would be is if we never had to do this again and be as active as we've been, right? Malik Carney, also one of the guys that was brought in, and I should have said 2024. Jeremy O'Day knows and understands that, if you can build success and build a foundation in your program, that continuity is huge. And that was really the key in a lot of different aspects this year. So to me, I know they're going to do everything they can. They understand they can't bring everyone back, but they'll do everything they can to bring players back. And talking with them on locker cleanout, it was incredible. So many of them said, if Trevor's coming back, I'm coming back.
And I think players look to evaluate their possibility of winning another championship. I know Stanley Bryant talked about that when he was a free agent. Teams were throwing money his way, and he said, look, we just won a Grey Cup here. I believe in this team. I'm going to get that money back by making the playoffs, getting playoff wins, getting Grey Cup wins. I don't need to go and chase that dollar. It's going to come to me. And I think that's the belief in this team right now. They had such cohesion this season that they feel that running it back is going to help them in the pocketbook just as much as chasing a contract somewhere else.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that was said right away by Luke Mullender. He was talking about it after 2007 and some of the opportunities that he had after winning the Grey Cup with the Riders. But because he felt that 07 team was so strong moving forward with Darian Durant at quarterback, he said, it would be ludicrous of me to go and take an extra couple of bucks here or there, where I can go ahead and I can look at myself being in the West playoffs every year. I can make Grey Cup appearances. I can win the thing. Like, he said, that was a huge factor that a lot of players keep in mind when they're deciding what they're going to do, especially when you talk things like the cost of living and the familiarity in Regina, right? They've already got that under their belt.
Saskatchewan, especially on defense, has really come together. And of course, Corey Mace is a defensive guru. He brought a team in Calgary to great heights. He took a team in Toronto to great heights, winning Grey Cups there. The whole idea of having strong leaders is something that he loves. And who do you think are going to be the leaders that people are going to be drawn to really push this team next year? Because it's one thing to win it. It's another thing to run it back.
Roland Milligan Jr., he doesn't say a lot, but boy, his actions speak very, very loudly. And the amount of respect that he has in the locker room is incredible. So he's one. Jameer Thurman also falls into that category. Very quietly, kind of under the radar a little bit, I would suggest, is Malik Carney. Again, Malik is a very, very good leader of men and a very good football player. And the unsung hero, I would suggest, on the defense for the Riders, and he was named an all-CFLer this year, very rightly so, but CJ Rivas, right? Like, he can start and play half. He played at the corner. He started at safety in the Grey Cup, and I think that the Riders really, really like what they saw in CJ Rivas at the safety spot. And it'll be interesting to see if he's coming back again. He's got so many ties with the guys in the secondary, but you can say that about every pending free agent for the Riders. They've all got ties and family bonds with one another, but CJ had such an outstanding season and proved what a stabilizing factor he could be when he played safety again with Lacombo and Ford out. it was huge that he stepped up in a moment and he made the most of that moment. And it was kind of a thing where him in tandem with Antoine Brooks Jr., when you put Antoine in the cover linebacker spot, you're like, oh, this looks pretty good. And the two of them just continue to make plays along the way. So I think that those are the guys that you're talking about that are kind of the core of the defense in Revis and Carney and Thurman and Milligan Jr. And now the challenge is making sure you keep them together, surrounded by the right pieces.
Well, Revis, if we go back to the Grey Cup game, he had a big knockdown that could have turned the tide in that game. Tommy Sneed was open.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And like I say, in talking with him, he was so excited when he got to move to safety. Why? Because where he was playing in the linebacking core, right, he was limited to half the field. He says, I can make plays all over the field now. I'm not bound by borders. And he sure showed that he could make them wherever the play came.
It was only, his third game in the position? Like, that's not bad.
Oh, no, but he did have some spots or some, I guess, some experience at the safety position in the NFL. So it wasn't a spot unfamiliar to him. And he credits Roland Milligan Jr. a lot for helping him make the right reads and understanding where they needed to go and put in the work. You're going to succeed. And CJ Revis is one of the hardest working guys, again, battling through all kinds of hurts and nicks and this and that. He was the first guy in, and you'd see his car there long after practice was done, but made a heck of an impression and pretty substantial piece of the Corey Mace-led defense.
I'm not going to put you on the spot here and make a prediction on a player getting cut by any means, but Brett Lother has had two back-to-back kind of up and down seasons where he struggled and then he turns around and he makes the big kicks. Do you see some competition for him in camp coming up this year, or has he kind of worked his way back through whatever issues he's been having?
No, I'm pretty sure that at very least there is going to be competition for him when it comes to what we're looking at in Saskatoon when training camp opens. I'm not sure what the draft picture or the draft board would look like, whether that competition will come in the form of a draft pick that the Riders may invest in, because Cameron Hughes just didn't work out. It wasn't his time. He had an opportunity and it just didn't fall into place. So I doubt that he comes back. I'll be curious whether or not they're going to bring an American kicker up, because the flexibility and versatility that the Riders have with their Canadian-born players right now, they have, boy, you win championships on your Canadian-born players, and the Riders can do that, whether it's in the receiving core, the linebacking core with A.J. Allen, Nick Weeb, Seth Hundeby, who's just re-signed. Yes, I would suggest there will at very least be competition for Brett Lother. The other question is, does Brett Lother want to do it again? Does he want to run it back? After the game, there was such a sense of relief from Brett that they had accomplished what they had set out to accomplish, and such gratitude in the team and the franchise believing in him down the stretch when they very easily could have turned their back on him. So if Brett wants to come back, I wouldn't be surprised that there would be some kind of competition for him in training camp. But who's to say that Brett's not going to win it, because they were competing down the backstretch of the regular season into the playoffs, and Lother outkicked his opposition in all of those kicking contests.
But he did leave a field goal off the scoreboard in the Grey Cup, and that kept Montreal within striking distance, which set up all of the finale stuff that we would go through.
But that's Saskatchewan. Like, we can't do anything the easy way, can we? Like, that was built into the game plan. Come on. But yeah, no, it's a what have you done for me lately? And we'll see whether or not Brett Lother. And again, I really think that the future is in what he chooses it to be. If he wants to show up and be the Rough Riders kicker, he'll have a chance to win the job in training camp.
In the future in the CFL, we're a year away from that, granted in 2027. But if all of these rule changes go through, I think we're going to have to see a change in the type of kicker that is in the league. And that's going to be a guy that has to be absolutely bulletproof 45 yards and out.
Yeah, it's going to change the game for sure. And it's going to be interesting because, yes, you're going to need to have the athletes perform at a higher level. Not saying that they're, or suggesting that they're not right now, right? But you're right. It's going to be a longer field. Or are the coaches going to make the change and start gambling more on third down? Hey, it's 3rd and 3, it's 3rd and 4. We're in plus territory. It's a heck of a long field goal. If we pin them back, we may not pin them back and give them the ball essentially where we are right now. Why don't we go? So I can see more third down exciting plays coming from the potential of moving the goalpost to the back of the end zone is my personal theory. But again, coaches are paid not to entertain, coaches are paid to win. They're going to figure out loopholes and ways to push those boundaries to make sure that they do get the win and not just entertain Dave Thomas in the booth.
Well, it also begs to the question, what type of punter are we going to see in the future too? Because the coffin corner is going to become huge.
Oh, big time. Absolutely. It's going to be more important to be able to place it than it is to boom it. We'll see how that works. Jesse Mirko, by the way, was doing a terrific job in practice at the end of the year and very encouraging to see his punt placement. It'll be curious to see how he grades out and what that punting game may look like as well come next year.
Steve Daniel, Associate Vice President with CFL, Charge of Football Analytics, and I'm happy to be here on Third Down Gamble.
I don't know about you, but for me, the Calgary Stampeders were kind of the surprise of the West this year. Saskatchewan had such a stranglehold on first in the second half of the season that they could rest some guys in those last couple of games. The wins didn't matter. They'd clinched first place, but there's a lot of parity in the West right now. And I think even though they had the same record as the previous year, the Elks are ascending. Do you see things tightening up? I know it's one thing to get to the top. It's another thing to stay there.
That's exactly right. You look at the BC Lions, right? Their deficiencies were on defense early in the year, and they just couldn't get it together before they finally bought into Mike Benevides' game plan near the end of the year. And that was a game changer for BC and allowed them to become competitive, allowed them to host the West semifinal. The one thing is smoke and mirrors sometimes, and you have to look at strength of competition. So Matthew Betts, let's not deny it. To get a quarterback sack is a hard thing to do, no matter who you're playing. But if you look at half of his sacks came after Labor Day, and they were against teams that were struggling, like Ottawa and Winnipeg. So if you're going up against a team that's struggling, you can look a little bit better. But I would agree that BC is going to be okay. Calgary took a huge step forward. Now can they take the next step is going to be my question mark for Calgary. In Edmonton, I will always wonder, and I'm sure some folks in Edmonton and the Alberta capital will wonder, what would have happened if we didn't have to play Trey Ford at the start of the year? What if Cody Fajardo, who would have been given a quality equal shot to start, what would have happened? Because their start was so horrendous that they basically buried themselves by Labor Day. And then Winnipeg. I don't think Winnipeg's going away quietly by any means. Like, to me, I still look at that team and they scare me, although the Saskatchewan Roughriders seem to have slayed that dragon a little bit this year, and maybe they've got that momentum and that moxie and mojo carrying forward. But to answer the question, you're right. There's parity across the West, and I have no idea who's going to be able to take the bigger step forward when it comes to chasing the Roughriders, which now everybody is doing, whether you like it or not.
Talk about the Calgary Stampeders, though. They were the team that did not lose to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, nor did they lose to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
No, you're right. With Calgary, their season was disrupted when Flo Orimolade went. You remember that Calgary acquired him in the offseason from Toronto for Cameron Judge, and you're looking at an American defensive end for a Canadian linebacker. Like, what are you thinking? But Calgary knew what they were getting. Flo had been there before. They understood the leadership that he could bring and the presence that he had along the defensive line. When he sustained the season-ending injury, you knew it was going to be trouble. And it was, until Calgary kind of righted the ship a little bit at the end of the year. But then Vernon Adams Jr. also was forced into some plays that maybe he wasn't as comfortable in making come the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see how that transforms and moves ahead for the Roughriders, or pardon me, the Calgary Stampeders. Because again, can they evolve, or are they going to be stuck with where they're at? And I think that they take another step forward next year, but we'll have to wait and see.
What do you think the Roughriders were thinking when Calgary was in BC for that West semifinal? Were they sitting there going, well, it doesn't matter who we play? Or were they hoping, come on, BC, because we know what you do. Calgary, we haven't figured out yet.
You know, it's interesting. I had two kind of schools of thought. At first, I thought, right, so if you go back to the last regular season game of the year, right, the Riders, the Riders were in it to win. They play every single game to win, and they really wanted to win that one. Again, they were also smart, though, understanding that, hey, we've got to rest our guys. Like, you don't want Trevor Harris to take a hit in the third quarter of a game that does nothing for you in the standings. But had the Riders won, they pushed BC to the east, and they're now the crossover team. And it would have been very interesting to see how those matchups would have went, whether it was against Montreal or Hamilton. And then when it came to Calgary and in BC is how it shook down. I think the Riders really wanted another shot at Calgary. Just the first game was the smoked out game. And again, it just did not go according to plan. And then in Calgary, the Stampeders got a couple of breaks real early and were able to seize that momentum and then physically dominate along the line of scrimmage. And again, the Riders would say, yeah, we got beat up by them. So to me, the Riders really wouldn't have minded seeing Calgary again just to see what they could do. But end of the day, that was kind of my thought process was like, oh, maybe you don't really want to see Calgary. Like maybe you'll be okay with that if Winnipeg comes into your house or if you have to see BC again. And I guess the circumstance would have it, it was the Lions that came back.
Well, if Saskatchewan wins, there is a slight chance that Winnipeg could have made it back to the West Final against Saskatchewan. We all think back to 2019. Doink. Do you think the Rough Riders would have went, okay?
Well, I feel bad for Winnipeg. They were so wounded at the end of the year, right? And the biggest one, and maybe this is, I don't want to say it's a red flag, but Nick Dembski is so intricate and so vital to that organization. And Luke Mullender calls them the Dembski Downs because Zach Collaros just found Nick Dembski when they needed a first down or when they needed a big play or when they needed a catch at the back of the end zone that was contested. It would seem to be Nick Dembski time. And when he blew out the hamstring late in the year, that was a tough blow for Winnipeg to overcome. And I know that you look at the numbers on Chris Streveler as the backup quarterback, and when he blew his knee out and was done for the year, I know everyone's saying, he doesn't throw the ball, but he was a morale guy. And again, when you have him in the game, you only need 8 yards on 2 downs because on the 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, I'm comfortable running Chris Streveler out there with everything that he can do to get you that first down, no matter where you are in the field. Those were 2 big blows, not to mention the secondary was nicked up throughout various times of the season. Trey Vaval, again, I loved what he brought to the table, and he was a dangerous threat. The Riders kind of went ahead and they picked on him a little bit in that last regular season game, of course, week 20. Yeah, I know, I get what you're saying when it comes to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. To me, they're just so physically depleted at that point of the year. It would have been really, really tough to pick them as a favorite, no matter who they had to face.
Offensive and defensive line play seems to be the way to build success, and arguably the Riders had the best defensive line in the league this year. I feel like the offensive line really benefited from some cohesion this year. We know last year they were absolutely decimated and had 13 different guys start a game on that offensive line. But to have Jamarcus Hardrick back, Logan Ferland could kind of settle into one position this year. Talk a little bit about what that meant to the success for the Riders this year.
Well, it's funny you say cohesion on the offensive line because trust me, we were going ahead and raising the panic flags on day one of training camp when your prized free agent center that you brought in from Calgary, Mike McEwen, goes down in the first workout. And it was like, are you kidding me? Then 2 days later, Philippe Gagnon, who you brought in to be basically your number 6 offensive lineman and a Canadian, there he goes too. So it was like, wow, are you kidding me? But then really, aside from getting a little bit nicked up at the left tackle spot, which was kind of a rotation piece through the back half of the summer, right? Peyton Collins, who went on to win the Rookie of the Year, started there primarily. And then they were able to get Travion Tate back for the Grey Cup and even the West Final after what he suffered and looked like it was going to be a season-ending biceps injury, but gets the surgery, works his tail off, and gets back. And so there's the left side that maybe was in flux a little bit, but you're right. The right side with Logan Ferland at center, Jacob Bramer at the guard, and then Jamarcus Hardrick and all the leadership that he brings, top lineman in the Canadian Football League last year. They were outstanding. And now the question is, what are you going to do moving forward? Logan Ferland will play any position you ask him to. He does feel more comfortable at guard. So if you move him to guard, where are you going to put Jacob Bramer? Well, Jacob has played on the left side before, but Travion Tate has been such a dominant force there. What are you going to do with him? You've got Peyton Collins sitting there. You've got Zach Fry there. Does Mike McEwen come back or not? I wouldn't want to be inside Jeremy O'Day's head when he has to figure out exactly what they're going to evaluate their offensive line at moving forward.
Well, he could argue and maybe look in the mirror and say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Go with what got you the Grey Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a firm possibility as well. But then you're going to have to risk losing some quality offensive linemen just because of the guys that the Riders got in there, as well as the guys that they afforded to put some tape out there, right? So Darius Washington, whom they've just recently re-signed, he started a game at left tackle, and again, he was shuffled in and around the offensive line a little bit. They really, really like him. That's why they're bringing him back quick, and he showed some good things when he was on the field, made some young mistakes, if you will, but it's just that pipeline. You got to keep feeding them, and like you're right. Like, it's good decisions to have, but it's not good decisions to have either.
Well, and I think, too, that the BC Lions are going to be free agent heavy on offensive line because Nathan Rourke, especially in that West final, he was running for his life. I mean, there's so many amazing plays he made, but that's because he was under siege.
Yeah. Again, that's why the BC Lions had problems running the football, too, against certain teams because they just couldn't dominate the line of scrimmage. So you're right. I would be very surprised if the BC Lions don't load up on offensive line. But the BC Lions have showed that they're willing to spend money. No matter what it takes, they're going to spend the money. And heck, with the salary cap, I think when they went so far over the cap in 2024, they lost the draft picks. And I think that perked up some ears. Like, when you're going $300,000 and $400,000 over the cap, like that's beyond what maybe is acceptable. And so maybe a little wrist slap in behind the scenes, like, let's not do that again. So you've already committed a bunch of money to Matthew Betts. You've already committed a bunch of money to Nathan Rourke. And then you've got Keon Hatcher Sr. Again, how aggressive can you be in free agency? And again, basically lost out on a couple of big key draft picks last year. I'll be curious to see what BC does. But again, there's going to be some teams that are in the market for a Keon Hatcher Senior type player, as well as some of the receivers that are on the Riders roster right now. You know that Edmonton needs an upgrade at the receiving position, or at least they've publicly said that they want to get an upgrade at the receiver position. I wouldn't put it past Calgary to look and see maybe what's out there as well. And then, of course, Toronto was so banged up everywhere last year. They'll be looking for some help at the receiving core. And I'm curious what happens in Ottawa with Ryan Dinwiddie. I am sold on Drew Brown being a quality starting quarterback in the Canadian Football League. Unfortunately, as Luke Mullender, again, I keep quoting Luke Mullender. He should get some revenue and royalty for this. But what's the best ability that you've got in the CFL is your availability. And Drew Brown has not had that the last year. So it'll be interesting how Ryan Dinwiddie evaluates that talent. And again, Eugene Lewis, again, just he didn't have a consistent pass thrower. So he didn't have a huge season, even though his numbers were fantastic. I thought he was going to go off the charts in Ottawa last year. And if they bring in some help for him, that could be really, really interesting.
Drew Brown doesn't get hellacious shots to the head.
Yeah.
He'd be playing almost all of the last two seasons, but Reddick Cramdy gave him one. And was it Amos that caught him just below the chin?
Yeah, I think
those types of things you can't account for.
No, but there is an argument. Number one, right? Those hits are illegal. Like, if you get hit in the head, it's illegal. So you can't argue against that. Sometimes you have to be aware and understand where that pressure is coming from. And so I'm not saying that you've put yourself in that position to receive a headshot, but if you're unaware of where the pressure is coming from and have made a poor read or decision, then that can come back to hurt you and hurt yourself in that way. So I think that that's going to be what's interesting. Like, remember, what was it, 23 or was it 22? Memory escapes me, but remember the Riders gave up all those quarterback sacks it must have been 22 with Fajardo, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So you're giving up 60 sacks. That's incredible. A number that, does show the offensive line, but it also shows your inability to get rid of the football quickly and understand where pressure is coming from and be able to find someone. And that's not all on Cody. There's receivers, there's offensive linemen that are involved in that. But again, it's not just hey, it's bad luck that he's taking those hits. You have to understand where those hits are coming from.
Let's cycle back now to the season that was the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Let's go back to that West final. 2:42 to go. This is a question that everyone's asking. Corey Mace sends the field goal unit out, kicks the field goal, leaves the team down by 4.
Third down, Riders.
What
and
are you
here
doing?
Comes the kick team.
No, it's the big team.
Isn't that Brett Lother? Indeed it is.
Brett Lowther. What are we doing here?
Lother is going to come out with 2:44 to go. And the Riders trailing by 7.
Hey, I get it. Take the points. You're just down 7 of them, though. That's the problem.
So 13-yard attempt.
Dave, if you see a look that you like, that you've worked on.
Riders worked on a couple of these in practice this week. Clean snap and a kick sails through. It's 21-17 BC with 2:42 to go. in the fourth quarter. And again, Brett Lothar now 3 for 3 on the night. Riders trail by 4. BC will get the ball back. Both teams have a timeout left.
You know what? Honestly, they are going. If the Riders do lose this game, Corey Mace is going to be answering questions about not going for it on 3rd and 5 for the rest of his life.
A lot of people said you got to go and get the touchdown right at that moment. What was your thought in the booth with Luke?
I think my thought and reaction was, oh boy, the coach just went from the penthouse to the outhouse real quick in Saskatchewan because the Boo Birds were out and they were audible at Mosaic Stadium. I asked the coach if he heard them, and he said, yeah, I did. And it kind of made the win a little more satisfying. But yeah, the initial reaction was you're putting a lot on the plate of your defense to stop who would become the most outstanding player in the CFL and Nathan Rourke. And I don't want to say I was skeptical or didn't believe, but I thought, boy, you're putting a lot of trust and faith in your defense. And I had worked out that trust and faith was
I think too that the team got the ball back. They still had to punt it away because they were 3rd and 10 at their own 36. And the defense had to do it one more time. Now, Nathan Rourke did them a favor, threw the ball out of bounds to keep that clock stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, that's the competitive nature from what I understand with Nathan Rourke. Like, he will not take a rep off, and he is unwilling to surrender a rep as well. And I think that if in hindsight you look, okay, maybe if I just go down, this clock's going to keep going, we're going to be okay. But again, that's just the competitor, and I don't think you don't want to stop that or rein that in, if you will, because that's what makes
now
Nathan
the Riders
Rourke,
make that
Rourke.
Big pass to Dante Myers, sets them up deep in BC territory. You're looking at the game clock. What's going through your mind? And then BC calls a timeout. That gives you time to talk. What do you guys talk about?
Well, it goes back a little bit further than that, right? 103 to go on the clock. The Riders get the ball at their own 34-yard line. And right away, I'm thinking to myself, okay, how is this a full circle moment? We're on George Reed's yard line with his daughter having performed the coin toss that we won. That's incredible. First pass, 23 yards to Sam Emelis. Wow, there's Ron Lancaster's number. And these are jumping off the pages at me right away. It was amazing when Trevor threw the ball to Dante Myers. Dante, I don't think, was his primary receiver on the play, and I didn't think that there was much of a window, of any window at the time. But Myers went up, held on to it after a huge collision with defender and ground, and things are set up. So BC now has to go ahead, and you're right, take that time out. At the time, Luke and I were talking about the type of defense that Mike Benavides was using, because he really wasn't throwing a ton of pressure because he was having everybody back off, just worried about what might have been, which isn't the best scenario. If you're not getting Trevor Harris off his mark or making him uncomfortable, he can dissect the defense. So they called the timeout, and Luke saw the personnel that was coming out for BC, and he said, we're going to be okay on this. And it was a run pass option play that they called, and probably 90 to 95% of people would have thought that was going to be a run because you got enough time, and you got AJ Ouellette.
Riders down by 4, 14 seconds to go. Ball on the 3, left-hand hash for Harris. The huddle will break. Clock won't start till the ball is snapped. Ouellette the lone back in the backfield. Riders crowd the offensive line. So do the Lions. Harris, pass, end zone, touchdown! Riders have it! Riders have it! The short yardage play from 3 yards out, and the Riders take the lead. Tommy Nield, touchdown! Tommy does it again!
Trevor Harris sees Tommy Nield come smoking in and makes the catch in the end zone, and the party was on. And again, I just remember thinking, geez, 83 just made the reception for the Riders with a number 83 and Andy Fantu sitting back in the replay center determining whether or not this is a catch. This is a pretty good omen all of a sudden, and it turned out it was.
How confident were you that was a catch?
I couldn't tell live. We had the same replay that TSN showed in our booth. Luke was 100% confident, and I was like, I've seen this movie before living in Saskatchewan all my life. I can't say that I'm 100%. Tommy Nield was very, very confident that he had caught it, or at least he was selling it very well. And after the fact, he says he knew that he had it. I'll trust Tommy.
Well, the one thing, and this is a Stu Johnson sort of nitpick that he wants to get rid of, is moving that goalpost back, because probably the best angle to see the completion of the play is obscured by the base of the goalpost.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Isn't that the same one that we hit back in 19? Throwing that out there.
It is. From everything I saw, and I was in stadium, I wish they would show the replays on the big screen. That really bugs me that they don't. I don't know why they don't. What are they afraid of? When I got home, got to see it on TV and watched the replay, I saw that left hand underneath the football. It was there the whole time. When this all came out that Amar Damon has that little snapshot showing something else being on the ground, and I couldn't tell if it was, well, A, there's no stripes, no threads, no CFL lettering on it, and B, there's also a BC line defender right there. Do you think that was good that he did that? That makes it more exciting that, hey, the owner of the BC Lions is upset about this and get some more talk about it? Or do you think, let's leave it alone?
I don't want to sound like I'm on the fence on this, but I have two very different arguments in my own mind that are of my own opinion. Number one, isn't it great to see an owner that is engaged in the game and the outcome? Like, how many years have things happen that the owner, you don't hear from the owners, you don't hear from the people that are in charge of the teams making a big statement or doing anything like that. So initial reaction was, this is awesome for the CFL. We've got people that are engaged in outcomes. Like, this is ideal. And then there was the other side that I'm thinking, I know if a player did anything like this, there would be some repercussions. I wonder if that goes to the ownership booth as well, is that the CFL is going to levy a fine or something on the owner after the fact. Because, again, you never want to bring the league into disrepute, which is definitely what he did with his tweet. So that's why I'm so torn. I'm like, you probably shouldn't have done that as an owner, but boy, was it cool to see that you actually care or invested in the game and the team. And like I say, it hasn't always been the case in the history of the CFL.
I don't know if he brought the league into disrepute. It just looks to me like he sees it differently than a lot of other people, and he felt that whatever that object was the football on the ground. I think he's entitled to that. It's such a close call, but I do believe that everything in the replays that I saw led me to believe that there was nothing they could overturn.
No, and again, that's the human element, right? It was called a touchdown on the field. So had they gone ahead and ruled it was an an incomplete pass, then it's likely still an incomplete pass. There's not enough there to turn it either way. I just don't think that you want the decisions being questioned by the owners in a public forum, right? You can go behind closed doors and say, hey, guys, you got this wrong. Here's the pictures that I have. And then you can debate that.
So the Riders get that Western final win. Walk us through a little bit of the Grey Cup week for you. We know you did your pregame and postgame shows live in Winnipeg. What was the rest of that week like?
Oh, it was a horse race. Absolutely. It started right after the West Final. Essentially, we got home that Saturday night, and Sunday, the entire day was spent planning and confirming our travel plans with the team and what it looked like. And again, we had everything set up, and nobody wanted to ever talk about, well, what if? As soon as the game was won, the planning had started. So players were getting everything that they needed to do and get set, and Luke and I were doing the same thing. We would leave on Monday afternoon is when we left and headed into Winnipeg. And when you got there, you just knew it was going to be something different. The team landed, went through the airport in Winnipeg, and they brought some minor football teams out to welcome both teams, which I thought was pretty cool. But there was a pretty good contingent of Rough Rider fans that were at the airport. So you do that, you go immediately into your first media availability of the week, and that happened right at the airport on Monday. After that, you kind of get checked in for Tuesday, where the team didn't actually have a practice. They could practice if they wanted, and it was all basically about film study and just acclimatizing yourselves to the surroundings. So the Riders held a little bit of a walkthrough, did some team meetings, and we had some media there on Tuesday, and also we're on the sports cage from 3 to 6 throughout the afternoon. So it was a busy day there. Wednesday, we turned the page, and we got back into what kind of seemed a little more normal as we were back at the stadium. The teams were practicing. Everything was kind of set and ready to go there. We also did the actual media day for the CFL, which was a first for me, and that was pretty cool. They brought out players from everybody, and they had their own little stand, so you go around and do that. Thursday, again, was back to practice, more normalcy, if you will, and then Thursday night, the player awards were handed out, where, of course, Logan Furland and Jamarcus Hardwick were recognized. I still get questions, why didn't they announce who the winner of the Coach of the Year was? That was because that I had forgot that they, and so had everyone else actually, that they're handing that out at the CFL Combine. So that was Thursday. Friday, we had the commissioner and the union's state of the league and state of the union address. And then, of course, practice. Saturday was a walkthrough and much more normal day. As in between those times, we were making appearances and stops at Riderville and emceed a couple of events that were happening for Rider fans and the Saskatchewan Roughrider Foundation who were in town. So that was Saturday. And then Sunday, we got to kick our feet back and do a pregame and postgame show and watch a Grey Cup game. And I guess an all-time historic win for the Roughriders.
Talk to me about 2nd and 2 at the Roughriders 3-yard line and Shea Patterson trots onto the field.
Oh, good grief. Wow. There was some nerves there. Absolutely. And again, I watched him go around and I wasn't, and just the angle that we had, we were in the far end zone. And so I wasn't sure that the Riders had recovered it right away. When we got confirmation with the replay, it was like, are you kidding me? And then the added bonus was that they ruled that Marcus Sales recovered it in the end zone. Otherwise, we have it at the 1. Instead, we get a freebie, move it on out, and you can go ahead and take some time off the clock. But I think that was the moment when I thought, okay, this destiny thing is kind of on our side because we just came up with a huge, huge play that is going to be difficult to overcome.
The choice to run Patterson on a 2nd and 2 at that moment. Montreal hadn't fumbled, hadn't failed all year long, but 2nd and 2, normally they wouldn't change their offensive set. And here we are in the Grey Cup, and they do so.
Well, I think you look at it, that's the safe, smart play, isn't it? Right? You got 2 yards and 2 plays to get it. And so you bring out the short yardage guy and you let him do that. You know, as much as some people may be willing to blame Shea Patterson, and yes, I'm a firm believer, hang on to the football, like you do have to also tip your hat to Tavon Campbell, who came in and made a play. And unfortunate that he got nicked up as much as he did this year. Is it really would have been spectacular to see some of this individual stats that he could have put up if he had played 18 games. But that said, when he was on the field, whether it was an interception, whether it was a tackle, whether it was a punching the ball out like we saw in the Grey Cup, the guy just likes making plays, and he makes big plays. And I don't think it's so much in that instance that Montreal lost that possession. It was that the Riders won that possession on defense.
For you personally, the rights are held by TSN for the Grey Cup Championship, TSN Radio. How hard was it for you not to be calling that game?
You know what? It's hard. Like on a personal level, right? You'd absolutely love to. Like a personal, professional level, absolutely. That's your dream, is to call a championship game. And yeah, you know what? There's envy and whatnot. But at the end of the day, when I signed up, I knew what I signed up for, and I understood the look and what the contract entailed. So I wasn't going to be bitter or anything about it at all. You know, like, yeah, it would have been really cool to do, but I still got to do a pregame and postgame show from the Grey Cup. I was still on the field with the Grey Cup. I was in the Riders locker room after the Grey Cup. So there's a lot more wins than there are losses. And maybe it's a win overall for everyone. They didn't have to hear my voice, but would I love the opportunity? Absolutely. To broadcast a Grey Cup game is up there, but under the current broadcast agreements in place with the Canadian Football League, that's just not the case right now.
I'm sure there's some people out there that think the play-by-play guy for a team only works 20 days out of the year. I'm not one of those people, but fill us in a little bit. What does the off season look like for you now that you're not so intertwined with the team getting ready to call those games every week?
Well, a typical day actually starts for me, whether it's in season or off season, at 4 a.m. So I actually go in and I take care of our network sports package. So whether that's Saskatchewan or Alberta, my voice is everywhere with sportscasts throughout the morning all around. So that part doesn't change. There are different strategy sessions, of course, as far as what the broadcast is going to be or could be or is, and looking back at that. So we'll take a look at that. I also am heavily involved in the development of our sportscage.com brand online, as well as just some of the social channels and the endeavors that we do with the actual daily radio show. But my days will be much shorter, as opposed to starting at 4 and ending at 6 p.m. They'll end probably a lot closer to noon in the off season. And it just allows me some time to do some more homework and prep and see what's going on around the league and also analyze what's happening with the Roughriders. So it is different. And yeah, I'd love to say I only work 20 or 22 days a year, but really those days aren't even work anyways. I can't make argument firmly.
What was it like for you in the locker room post game? All the celebration, all the champagne flying everywhere.
Surreal, absolutely surreal. And to put it in a word, basically, Luke and I, we were standing at field level when the last pass went incomplete. I gained a real understanding of what this championship meant. Again, we know what it means, or we thought we knew what it meant to the province. We kind of understood what it meant to the organization, but what it meant to the players that came before the guys that were on the field was huge. As you could see that the emotion in Luke's face and being proud and being a proud alumni and just recognizing what the achievement was is something I'll never forget. We were on the field, go into that locker room, and you see the celebrations, whether it's the Stanley Cup or the 17,000 that they have in the course of a Major League Baseball season. You just don't fully understand how much joy and euphoria there is. But you're in there and just kind of soaking it up. And I don't want to say it was relief, because it definitely wasn't relief, but it was just the satisfaction of accomplishing the goal and how the players just wanted to be with each other. And so you almost kind of feel like an intruder in those conversations and in those interactions, but it's a moment you're not going to forget. Whether it was Corey Mace dancing, I think that was it was dancing. Whether Corey Mace dancing or Trevor Harris going ahead and having his parents drink out of the Grey Cup, just moments you'll never forget.
As much as I can understand the players wanting to just be surrounded by each other in those moments, I look at the European Ryder Cup team and the party bus afterward. I think that initial celebration, you get the family in there, you get the media. The flight back to Regina must have been kind of that party bus situation for the Riders.
It was interesting, yeah, for sure. Is the celebration didn't turn to solely the players until really we were kind of back in Regina, because the families were there every step of the way, and that's a real big priority for Coach Mace and Jeremy O'Day and the culture, is that the family is included in everything, and everyone's family was in every part of that celebration and aspect in Winnipeg. When we came back into Regina, I was expecting a quieter flight, and I think I was a little naive in that. Again, the team takes off the shirts to come out onto the tarmac, and then the celebration basically started on that Champions deck at Mosaic Stadium and continued for a pretty good 72 hours.
What was it like on the parade day? What were you doing and what were you experiencing?
Parade day was pretty neat, as again, I didn't really have any official duties, and that doesn't happen all the time around the team. So I was able just to fanboy out. So I kind of stood with the crowd as the team was coming to the legislature and saw that happen. Then had an opportunity just to talk and interview the players, as again, we had spoken when we got back, but didn't have a real opportunity to put a microphone in their face. And again, it was just sheer joy seeing the guys celebrating. And again, they celebrated hard. That's pretty cool to capture that emotion, because it was all raw. Yeah, that was kind of my view. I was just kind of chilling out, hanging out, and talking to guys that had just won a Grey Cup. It was pretty neat.
Dave, thank you so much. Where can people follow you on radio, and where can they find you on the socials?
Well, of course, you'll find me. Sportscage.com is the website that is delivering Saskatchewan sports news. We're very, very proud of that. Of course, I'm on the Rider Broadcast Network, anchored by 620 CKRM. You'll find me on all the social channels. _at _sportsdave is my X handle. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You'll find me. I seem to show up everywhere, according to my kids.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you again.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks so much.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble Podcast. Audio worth watching.